Welcome back to the podcast. I am pleased to introduce you to part two of my interview in the conversation with Ryan Borgerding from Jarbo Employment Group. And this conversation revolves around the critical need of manufacturing companies to shift their focus from hiring for immediate needs to investing in employees' long-term careers by recognizing the value of coachable attributes over traditional skills and bridging gaps between management and operational realities and developing leadership. Firms can foster talent retention and build thriving teams. There's several aspects of this that we consider in our conversation, from the need of quality over mere numbers and importance of transferable skills from other industries, and then the disconnect between the executive goals and the floor realities. There's a lot of great insights that Ryan shares in this, and I think you'll be encouraged in it. Check out part two of our interview with Ryan Borgerding from Jarbo Employment Group. All right, so you just finished stating something that I think is so critical for us, that we're struggling with quality of talent, not just bodies. And I was recently talking with a shop owner and their leadership, and what I discovered is that a couple of members of their leadership have only been in their roles for between 2 and 4 years, and they moved to leadership roles. And I just asked, if you could be confident that a hire could become what you are 2 to 4 years into your career, would you be more confident in making hires moving forward? And they're like, oh, we'd be thrilled with that. We just haven't found that yet. And as I continued to unpack that with people, what I discovered is they didn't necessarily come from the trades background. One of them was a server in a restaurant, and the other one worked in garages and stuff like that, but got into the trades. So to your point about the talent, sometimes I wonder if we can be more intentional about finding the signature characteristics that apply to quality machining or quality manufacturing the way we need it to. If we can hone in on those skill sets, then we can probably explore outside of the manufacturing industry and find talent that's going to achieve what we want it to achieve. What's your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's a certain, I don't want to say mentality, but just know-how that comes naturally from a mechanical perspective. And I say that confidently because I don't have a mechanical bone in my body. Like I
Yes.
understand how all this stuff works, but to actually do it myself, like my hands just don't work in that way. My mind just doesn't work in that way, right? So it's really that mechanical aptitude that, again, I think is more of a innate and kind of natural thing that people pick up on earlier in their lives from being exposed to that. And you find that a lot with people that had parents or family members or friends or whatever it may be that they were exposed to at a young age, that were doing all their own home improvement work, doing all their own work on their cars, and that were involved in and engaged with it early on, and just have a general knack for the understanding of the way things work.
Yep.
I always think of that show, like How It's Made. Like it's like there's the people that already know how it's made.
Yeah, some people
Uh,
look at that and say, of course, and others of us are staring at it thinking, how did they do that?
and they're for the longest time for us, right? Like the companies aren't going to pay us a hefty fee to you know to recommend them, somebody that works in food service. Like
Yep.
they're only going to be interested in people that have directly related skills from professional work and experience that they can put on a resume, right? And so naturally that led to us not taking the time to have those conversations with folks that didn't have that those things on their resume already. But as things have gotten tighter, I should say, in the labor market, it's forced us to to think outside the box and start having conversations with just about anybody and everybody, right? And we have found a lot of success, especially here after like the post pandemic hiring craze that went on. That was really the thing that forced a lot of companies to start getting creative. And that's when we started calling on a lot of people that we wouldn't have previously, and we've made a number of successful placements. A few of which that I hold in high regard, that were folks that never would have gotten a look for these positions, and in prior years that have excelled in their roles. And so I totally agree with that. Like, kind of we need to get away from that mentality of like, we need to see this experience proven in somebody before we're going to give them a shot, and think more about like what are those base building blocks that are really necessary to to create a successful employee, machinist, whatever it may be.
So I'm going to put this out there, and this is going to rub some people the wrong way, and I'm okay with that. Whether you are a company of 3 people or a company of 3,000 people, I think what most of us are making a mistake in this industry with is that we are hiring people for a job and we are not hiring people for a career. And we are so busy just trying to plug holes in the ship that's sinking that we're throwing people in, and we haven't created a pathway to say, you know what, this is the entry point and the opportunities for you to grow look like this. In fact, we will provide training to people who are here for so long that's going to make them eligible to be a supervisor in the future. And we're going to invest in you and cause you to grow. And we get so tunnel visioned on looking at a skill set, and we never think about what this person needs as a vision for their future, not just a paycheck today. And if we're hiring for people who just want a paycheck today, we're going to lose those people when they can get a bigger paycheck someplace else. And I think that's one of the missing links, that organizations aren't thinking enough about their future to hire people to careers. They're just hiring to jobs. What do you think about that?
I couldn't agree more. And I mean, it's got there's a perpetual nature to that, right? Like, when you're hiring bodies just to fulfill, solve short-term problems and fulfill short-term needs, like, you're going to just continue chasing your tail, right? Like, that body's going to leave and then you're going to need another, and it's just going to be there's a cyclical nature to it, right? And how are you to grow as an organization if you're just constantly chasing your tail, right? And so I totally agree from that standpoint. Like, I think, if I'm the business owner, if I'm the shop owner, I would intentionally slow the growth, intentionally turn down, potential orders, to put more of an emphasis into that, specifically. And by that I mean, hiring, creating an environment and a an opportunity that is more of a career than just a job.
So, what's the gap you think between how the C-suite looks at the company's growth and how the reality on the floor looks at the company growth? Because I think what you're describing is that gap. That, you know what, we did X revenue last year, we want to grow that by 18% this year, and sometimes projecting those growths by the number is really out of touch with the crisis that they're experiencing on the floor with hiring the right talent and raising up the right leadership. Would you say that's where the gap is sometimes in this?
Absolutely, and particularly in manufacturing. And I look at it in comparison to, like, engineering, for example, or really any like service based business. In a service based business, and like for engineers, we'll use like designers as an example. Like, the work that that individual is doing is billable to projects, right? And
Yeah.
so it's a lot easier to look at those hires with that return on investment mentality. Whereas in like manufacturing, it's really like there's more emphasis put into the machines and the machinery, and what they can produce, and not necessarily as much put into the employees, which makes sense from a financial business perspective, right? I mean, it's the the employees. We'll use a machinist as an example. It's not like they're getting their work that they're doing is getting billed out at an hourly rate. Like, it's, to my knowledge, it's seldom that, you know, that jobs are priced in that way. It's, I need this many parts produced, and then this is how much I'm going to pay for these parts. And obviously they're factoring their labor costs into it, but without that labor cost being, directly billable and having a multiplier or markup applied to that, like, I feel like that's where that separation that gets created, that mentality of the employee versus the owner,
Yeah.
like that's a big impact, big thing that influences that. But I I haven't seen it yet, and from what I've read and researched, like, I don't know that automation is really ever going to reach the point where it's going to completely alleviate the need for people in these positions. And so, in the absence of that, like, you have to give more consideration to that individual, because they, and I think looking at them and more of in terms of, this person's actually the thing that's returning me and providing a return on my investment. It's not the machine, right? I think
So
shifting that mentality would serve a lot of those places well.
let me throw out a thought here. And I don't know that I've ever really put this out there before and I've given it too much thought before, but if we start hiring automation, we're going to be spending hundreds of $1,000s on machines, right? And those machines, we are going to invest tens of thousands of dollars in maintaining those machines going forward. You know what I'm saying? Because the machines doing the work have to be operating at a peak level. Why aren't we doing that now with people? Why aren't we doing the investment in our people to make sure they're operating at their highest level? So we're invested in their well-being, we're invested in their thinking, we're investing in how they are disrupted today because of the chaos that's happening at home and stuff like that. I think we're making a big mistake by saying we'll hire machines to do it in the future without the reality that there's going to be maintenance cost in that. And really, there's maintenance cost in what we're doing. We're just failing to pay for that. And that's why we're running on such a high turnover rate, because our machines, which are our people, keep breaking and leaving the organization. What are your thoughts on that?
That's well said. I mean, it's a good analogy, and I couldn't agree more. It's these machines are just a very expensive, large, heavy paperweight, without the people to run them, right? And so, you know, using that, applying that mentality, like, there should be just as much, if not more, of investment of time, effort, and energy into figuring out how to make that employee as productive and happy and healthy as possible, as you know these shop owners are applied to these machines. And I get it too. I mean, these machines, in some instances, are millions of dollars, right? And an employee, isn't, at least from day one, that expensive. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I get it. While there's a lot more intentionality put behind, how do we keep this machine happy, and in comparison to how do we keep this employee happy.
yeah.
But
But not a lot of people
when you
keep the
start
machine.
considering the cost of retention and everything that goes into that, and I think a lot of companies and business owners have heard about, like, how costly retention is, but I don't know a lot that have actually analyzed the true cost of
Yeah,
what that is for them. And when factoring on all the indirect components of it, I've heard a variety of different estimates, but I don't think 5 times their base compensation is too far off from how costly it is to lose a good production employee.
and there's also a lot of research that says as long as you have an empty spot on your line, you're losing $14,000 per person at a average. Some of those are upwards of $25,000 just by not having that spot filled. So they're like, oh, I don't want to work with Jarbo because it's too expensive for me to hire someone right now. Well, you're literally losing $14,000 by having that spot not filled. And I find that to be an interesting statistic.
One worth be mindful of, that's for sure.
Hey, let me ask you this, and I want to be mindful of your time. We'll go another 10 minutes or so here if you're good with that. But
Yeah,
um, so my passion is developing leadership, particularly mid-level leadership in the manufacturing space. So here is a curious question, and don't name names. I don't want to uh, upset any of your clients or anything like that. But how often do you have a great employee and a great company, and you place that employee and they just can't work with their leader? I mean, does that ever happen where, man, how we've been pitched this company just feels like a perfect fit? And then you get a leader in there that is not carrying out the vision of the company and it's creating chaos for a team member. Is that a unique thing, or do you see the leadership that your placements work with don't feel consistent with the pulse of the organization?
it's I don't have enough fingers and toes to count how many times we ran into that exact scenario. And I think it's really like the why behind that is a lot of manufacturing companies, and I think of the same in the same way in construction, is a lot of times those mid level managers are were the best production employees, right? They're the best machinist, and they got elevated to that role because they were the best production employee. And same for, I see in construction a lot too. And that's and that very well may be true. They might be the best production worker there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the best leader. And I feel like that's where a lot of businesses have got that decision wrong in terms of who to place in that position, because it's really that person is gonna it carries more responsibility than anybody else as far as the retention of the staff that they've been entrusted to lead and manage. And so and I say this a lot of times when I'm talking with candidates, like most people, even though they're going to work for a company and this company has a name, like it's really a person that they're going to work for, right? And it's that person that a lot of times it dictates how successful, enjoyable of an opportunity that it is. And so we make it a point to try and whether or not, like, I don't know, some companies we have to work through HR, and they got their thing, and I don't want us talking to their managers and stuff, but we'll still try and learn things about that individual. If not, get to know them personally, because that's really what we're, what that's really what dictates whether or not we're going to be able to find a good match. It's somebody that's going to work well with this person that is going to be managing and leading them, right? And so it's happened more times than, again, I can count, where we've all other things considered, it would have been a great match. But unfortunately, because of the person that was in that mid-level management role, it ended up not being a good match. And when you see it happen once, it's like, okay, maybe those just weren't the right personalities, right? But when you see it happen two, three, four times, then you start recognizing that there's likely an issue. And for us in our business, it's we come into a lot of information and insight, especially as a third party, a lot of times in these employment relationships. And so we get a lot more transparent feedback from folks that we have working at different places. And information that likely that business owner would never come into themselves. And so it puts us in a precarious position sometimes, because we don't want to be telling our clients how to run their business, right? But at the same time, like, we want their business to be successful, because the more successful their business is, the more successful we're going to be, more positions we're going to have to fill for them, right? So we want to provide that coaching and encouragement where we can, but we're walking on eggshells every time that we do, particularly when it's feedback related to somebody that a client's put in a management position, and feeling like maybe they need to identify somebody else for that. But
Yeah.
those that have listened, I mean, plenty of success stories of us providing that feedback and the necessary changes being made to prevent the retention issues from being reoccurring.
Well, if they need some help developing their leaders, let them know I'm available, and I'd be glad to work with them. So,
Absolutely.
but and the flip side, if if the if you keep placing someone in a role and the company concludes that, you know what, that's our third person we've hired from you. You're not sending us very good people. At some point, you got to start thinking, wait, maybe it's some of our infrastructure that's wrong to receive the quality of people they're sending, not necessarily our people. Their people are wrong. And sometimes you've got to look at patterns and you've got to diagnose what you're seeing based on the pattern rather than conclude that we're never wrong. And I would imagine from a staffing agency that could be very frustrating for you guys to navigate that. Well, man, this is fascinating. Anything else? What would your appeal be to a company that's feeling that staffing um, pinch and they need someone? What would you want to say to them about how Jarbo might be able to be a conversation they should have, or a partner they should collaborate with?
Yeah, I'd say if you're looking for a partner that is actually gonna listen to what your problems are, and even help you to kind of define what they are at a more granular level, like we are that. And a matter of fact, like we really only have interest in partnering with companies that care enough about talent acquisition and making the right hires to put forth that time, effort, and energy, and setting us up for success. So that I'd say that's a key component. And then just more generally speaking, like for anybody that's in a pinch, I'd say don't let that feeling of pressure force you into making a hiring decision without giving full consideration to how good of a fit it's going to be, because again just going to end up costing yourself more time and creating more angst if you're letting that pressure get to you. And I see that all too often, where these quick knee jerk decisions are made out of the feeling of of needing to get somebody on board right away, and it's seldom when there isn't some form of thoughtful consideration put into it from both ends of the table that it ends up being a good long-term fit. So I'd say if you're looking for a partner that actually cares about that, like that's us. Our mentality's always been like, let's make it a point to work ourselves out of work, right? And what I mean by that is we want to make enough successful placements with our customers, with hires that actually stick, that eventually they don't need us anymore. They're fully staffed and have a team that they're able to retain. And I can say we've been successful in doing just that, working ourselves out of work. And thankfully, when you do it and you do it the right way, generally you're getting a referral to some other business that needs help. So
Yeah. I'd also encourage people personally, don't assume affordability or lack thereof of these services, because when you talk about onboarding someone and payroll and benefits and stuff like that, I just would encourage people to at least reach out and have the conversation rather than conclude we don't want to pay that, because the cost of the wrong hire is far more expensive than investing in the right process to get the right hire.
absolutely. And I just to speak to that real quick too. Like one thing that I feel like gets lost a lot of times in terms of consideration of a staffing fee is everything that goes into that. Because again, our goal is to identify the right person that we've confident could be a good long-term fit, and we're not gonna send over recommendations of people who don't feel that way for, right? So we may send one or two candidates for an open position, and in the client's eyes, it's, oh, you found two people and now we're paying you 8, 10, 12, whatever it is. And the reality is it took us 200, 300, 400 other people to get to these two people. So it's like you're not actually paying for the person that you end up hiring. And I mean, technically the placement fee is tied to that individual, right? But what you're really paying for is all the
The
stuff that
filter.
happened to get to that one person,
Yeah,
right?
that's a great point. Well, hey, let me do this. I do something called the speed feed, where I'm just going to throw a handful of questions at you. Just give me your first reaction to it. You don't have to overthink it, but would love your take. So, if you go to a Chiefs football game with any important person, who would you want to go with?
Jason Kelsey.
Oh, that would be an interesting experience. Is that just so you can sit up in the suite where he'd be sitting, or is that just because you think he's a fun guy?
I think he's a fun guy and be a great time, and obviously with the ties that he has to Kansas City Chiefs football, be
Why
better
not?
to watch the game with.
Love it, love it. So those early mornings when you have to get to an early meeting, are you a coffee, energy drink guy, or something else to keep you going?
Coffee,
Yeah.
specifically iced coffee,
Okay. Winter and summer, you're an iced coffee
winter
guy.
and summer.
Very good.
It
Um,
goes down quicker. It gets me going quicker.
yep. Very good. So, what do you think is the greatest threat to manufacturing right now?
Employee retention.
Okay. Yep. Not surprising you'd feel that way, but I think a lot of people feel that way. So, yep, good. Uh, what's one tool in your leadership tool belt you couldn't live without?
Servant mentality.
Love that. How does that show up on any given day for you?
Doing everything I can to position staff for success.
Yeah, love it, love it. Um, if there was one leadership, if there was one skill set you could master uh, in a day, what would you pick?
So many. Power of positive thinking. I mean, I don't
There we
know how
go.
to define that as a skill set, but
No, I absolutely think there's a skill to that. By the way, a great book along that line is a book called The Gap and the Gain by Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. So, highly recommend that, focusing on what you've accomplished rather than what's not right. So, highly recommend it. Good response. I love it. Um, Last question, and uh, you don't have to speak too fast on this, but give it whatever time you need. If you could only tell the audience one thing about your passion, what would you have to say?
my passion is to leave a leave a lasting impact. Make the world a better place, and it's the older I get, the more I come to realize that it's impossible to be everything to everyone. So, just being mindful that there's a ripple effect to, the things that you do in life. And, even though it may not seem like a very significant impact that you're leaving on the world, if you influence an individual in the right way, again, it's got that ripple effect. So,
Good. And that's a great way to end things. Thanks so much for being a part of this, Ryan.
yeah, appreciate it, Ryan. We'll see
All
you
right.
later.
Take care.
Later.
All right, more great stuff with Ryan. I hope you're enjoying the great insight from the amazing people we have in the Kansas City area in the manufacturing space. It's great to have partnership with a company like Jarbo and with great leaders like Ryan and Nick. Want to remind you, we've got our next class coming up in for developing mid-level leaders that Circle of Five is doing, and it starts February 6th. And the registration deadline is actually this week, February 1st, before the price increases. So if you're thinking about having someone be a part of that, make sure you sign up for that before that price increase happens. We've got room for some more people and would love to invest in your team and shape where they're heading. In this initial class, we're going to be talking about leadership mindset and also developing transformational culture. So if you're looking to shape some of the leaders in your organization to grow in their thinking and owning the responsibility of their leadership role, as well as owning that desire to improve your organizational culture, this is a great stepping stone for them to take that next level. We're going to meet for 3 weeks on Thursday mornings from 8:30 to 11:30. It's all online. They don't have to do any travel. They can just do it from a computer someplace where they have the ability to focus. And then we'll have a follow-up peer advisory group that's focused specifically on people in that group, where we're going to drive that home in March and April, or excuse me, yeah, in March and April, so that people can continue to reinforce. Because too often we learn stuff, we get excited about it, and then it fades off and we set back into normal behaviors in the past. We want to reinforce it, and that's why we're going to continue this peer advisory group 2 times in March and 2 times in April. If you want your leadership to step up to that next level, get them register. We look forward to being a part of it. Our next podcast coming up will be with Catherine O'Toole with the KCNTMA, and we're going to look at the events that are coming up in the month of February. You won't want to miss that. Thanks so much.